As the French were complaining about perfidious Albion, Spain became a threat now too, but it was unwilling to join the war against the British as it was heavily dependent on British economic supplies. The UK offered Spain some economic aid, but also made it clear that if it became hostile to the British, it would blockade Spain to hell and back, and so Spain has offered a carrot and stick approach to try and keep them out of the war and stop them threatening Gibraltar. Now, British war supplies had been timber from Scandinavia, food from the Netherlands and Denmark, iron ore from Sweden and North Africa, and oil from Romania. All of these, of course, now were unavailable. But the British coped well. The large Norwegian merchant fleet had escaped. It included the world's third largest tanker fleet, and this would help with supply in the British Isles. The Belgian and Dutch empires were incredibly valuable and had become available to the UK war effort. Metals and food would come from Australia, New Zealand and Canada. Oil would come from the Caribbean, but journey times had increased by 40%. On the 25th of June, at 1:35 in the morning, the French armistice was agreed. Hitler could not decide, however, now he would beat the British. He thought only of the army and did not understand naval power or the British way of war. With the British army defeated and disarmed, he did not understand how a nation could fight on. Most of the 150,000 French troops that had been evacuated then had to return to France. They decided they wouldn't join the Free French forces and instead insisted on their right to go back home. And so the British had to negotiate to actually ship French soldiers back to France to go into German prisoners of war camps after rescuing them from Dunkirk. However, from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands and Belgium, people were escaping Europe to try and join the British in their fight, and the British decided that they would fight on against the Germans. So the Battle of Britain. The Luftwaffe is ill-prepared due to the chaos in Nazi Germany. Now, they had designed a fighter, the Heinkel 112, and that was superb, better than the 109 with a longer range. But Messerschmitt, the designer of the 109, was a good Nazi party man, whereas Heinkel, the designer of the 112, was suspected of having Jewish blood. And so the Germans decided to go with the 109, not the 112, in large quantities. Now, Goering was also wrongly convinced that the Me 110 was a good fighter. It performed very well against Polish biplanes. And so a lot of 110s were being built. And he'd also messed around with the design of the Junker 88 to make it into a dive bomber as well as a flat level bomber, meaning it was produced late and slow. And so the Luftwaffe had a series of design flaws to its aircraft, and in some cases built the wrong aircraft. Also, in June 1940, the Germans had stripped the training schools of pilots and planes as they were preparing for a short war, which had severely slowed the training of pilots. And the German bomber forces had suffered huge losses in the skies over Dunkirk. From the 15th of May to the 4th of June, British Bomber Command, freed finally from French interference, conducted 1,700 sorties over German cities. Not doing a huge amount of damage, but certainly annoying the Germans with a constant drip of bombing. But after the losses in France and over Dunkirk, Fighter Command had lost 396 Hurricane and 76 Spitfires. British Fighter Command was now down to just 331 fighters to protect Britain. But critically, Germany had to spend 3 weeks building air bases in northern France, as the 109, unlike the 112, was too short-ranged to operate in the skies over Britain from the existing bases. And so the decision to go with the 109 instead of the 112 gave the British those vital 3 weeks to try and prepare. Lord Beaverbrook had been put in command of UK air production on the 17th of May, and he had ordered that only 5 types of aircraft would now be built to save production time. The British would build Spitfires, Hurricanes, Blenheims, Whitleys and Hamptons only. Production rose from 130 aircraft a week to 300. In June, the British built twice the number of planes Germany did, and by July, Fighter Command had 600 aircraft, and unlike France, had a fully working radar chain and ground control. The British kept bombing Germany day and night as Germany prepared for its air assault on Britain. 58 raids in July, 41 of them against German cities. In July, Germany started bombing British Channel shipping to try and draw the RAF out to battle. The RAF butchered Stukas when they appeared, but largely refused to come out and fight over the Channel, as they were making up their losses suffered in France and over Dunkirk. Meanwhile, the British Empire was being armed for the struggle. The British expected 21 out of their 55 divisions to be from the Empire. Canadian troops were arriving in the UK. Australian, New Zealand and Indian troops would be sent to the Middle East. And Canada was a godsend. It had excellent weather and was obviously incredibly distant from the front line, a real gift for the training of pilots. Rhodesia and South Africa soon were turning into giant pilot training bases too. The Home Guard had been formed on the 14th of May as the LDV, and, contrary to many popular views, is actually quite effective. Formed of First World War veterans, farmers who were good shots, and local people who knew the land, equipped with American equipment, it could be expected to put up some fight. The British Army was also by July readying for any counterattacks, to launch counterattacks on any beach landings, and was being hurriedly rearmed. In July, the Channel battles, the Luftwaffe had used only 10% of its available strength, while Hitler was waiting for the British to surrender. He expected to surrender any day, but despite the fact the Luftwaffe was holding back, still 185 German planes were shot down in the Channel battles, compared to 91 British aircraft lost. Finally, running out of patience with the British, on the 1st of August 1940, Hitler issued Directive Number 16, an order to prepare for the invasion of the United Kingdom. So much time had critically been lost by the Germans. The Kriegsmarine, the German fleet, said they would be ready for the invasion by the 15th of September. Goering had still not actually started planning for an air war, but said that the RAF would have been destroyed by then. Indeed, Goering believed that the RAF could be destroyed in 4 days. By the 6th of August, the Luftwaffe was ready to launch the attack on Britain, but the weather was bad, and so the attack was delayed. The 13th of August was Eagle Day. Goering began the assault on the RAF, believing it could be won in 4 days. But he'd underestimated the strength of the RAF, believing the RAF strength was 50% lower than it was, and he underestimated the importance of radar. They believed they had shot down 350 British fighters up to the 12th of August. In reality, they'd shot down 181. They believed that the British had produced 300 aircraft in this time, whereas in reality, they'd produced 700. Eagle Day itself was also badly organised. Fighter escort for the bombers was cancelled, but the bombing attacks had gone ahead anyway. Some RAF airstrips were attacked, but the damage done to them was slight. On the other hand, German intelligence believed that these airfields had been completely destroyed, so they didn't bother attacking these airfields again, allowing the RAF to use them. German losses were high. Churchill was actually more worried about the situation in the Middle East against Italy. The British had 36,000 men in Egypt and 27,500 men in Palestine, supported by 200 aircraft, to try and hold the Middle East. And so at the height of the Battle of Britain, reinforcements were being sent out of Britain to the Middle East. On the 15th of August, Goering stops the attacks on the radar stations, as he thought the attack in the radar was pointless. Indeed, he wanted the RAF to have radar stations working because he believed that the radar would bring the RAF fighters up where his fighters could then shoot the British down. And so he wants the RAF to know that the Germans are coming. A real godsend of a decision for the British. On the 18th of August, there's a huge air battle in the skies above Britain. Germany loses 67 planes that day, mostly Stukas and 110s. The British lose 33. It's the Luftwaffe's worst day since the 10th of May. But the RAF is being worn down too, as well as the Luftwaffe. Now, the RAF has plenty of planes, but it's desperately worried about pilot losses. In August, the RAF would lose 176 pilots and aircrew, but Germany would lose 993. But when we look at plane losses, it becomes a lot more even. In terms of planes, the RAF lost 389 aircraft to Germany's 694.